On this episode of China Uncensored, everyone's a winner. Wait, what's that, Shelley? Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Trade wars. That's more than just George Lucas's unproduced spin-off of the Star Wars prequels. According to the leaked script, it follows Jar Jar Binks as he infiltrates the Trade Federation. Strange that it never got made. Anyway, trade wars. That's what some experts are afraid might happen if President Trump carries out his promise to impose a tariff or tax on goods made in China. He blames China's unfair trade practices for the loss of American manufacturing jobs. Here today to talk about this issue is the only person at China Uncensored with an economics degree from Trump's own alma mater, University of Pennsylvania, Shelley Zhang.
Thanks, Chris.
How likely is it that Trump is going to impose tariffs on China?
Oh, he's definitely going to do it.
Really?
100%.
How can you be so sure? I'm not sure about anything anymore.
Okay, yes, President Trump can be a smidge unpredictable, but railing against unfair trade practices is kind of his jam. In 1987, he took out this full-page ad in the New York Times. In it, he criticized Japan for taking advantage of the U.S. with its weak yen and trade surpluses, and suggested that we tax Japan and other countries for the services the U.S. provides, like keeping the world safe. Sound familiar?
I guess China is the new Japan?
Yeah, just a quick find and replace, and he can still use the same speech 30 years later.
Okay, so when President Trump imposes tariffs on China, what effect will that have? Will that start a trade war?
That I don't know. It really depends on how high the tariff is and how broadly it's applied. Trump has talked about wanting to impose a 45% tariff on all Chinese-made goods. Something that big would probably trigger China to impose its own tariffs on American goods in retaliation. That could lead to a trade war. Of course, you could argue that China already started the trade war years ago, when it did things like artificially lowering the price of their products through export subsidies, stealing intellectual property, and setting up ways to keep U.S. companies from competing in China. That's definitely how the Trump administration sees it.
Well, more important than who starts it is who finishes it. Who wins the U.S.-China trade war?
Experts are divided, Chris. Some say it will hurt America. Others say China will lose. Meanwhile, Chinese state-run media say that China would totally not get hurt by a trade war, and it's not going to happen. Plus, why would the U.S. want a stupid trade war anyway? Which means state-run media also thinks China will lose.
So what you're saying is America wins.
Well, it's complicated. Americans will lose in that tariffs mean companies will raise prices on made-in-China stuff. So we'll have to pay higher prices on most stuff at Walmart, as well as things like appliances and consumer electronics.
But will tariffs bring American jobs back?
They might bring some jobs back, but not necessarily the same ones that left. Jobs might require higher technical skills, for example. Low-skill manufacturing jobs probably aren't going to come back. Lots of those have already been replaced by technology, and U.S. companies can just move to other third-world countries with cheap labor.
Like the Donald J. Trump signature collection has already started moving from China to other countries.
Yes, although in a recent speech, Trump said he will give U.S. companies tax breaks and other incentives to come back to the U.S. Tariffs could also create different jobs. For example, in industries where China has a virtual monopoly, like on rare earth minerals, which are needed to make electronics, tariffs could cause a huge shortage in the short term, but in the long term it could encourage American companies to start mining rare earth minerals.
What about China?
Well, China has more to lose because they sell us more stuff than we sell them. And in a trade war, generally the country with the trade surplus gets hit the hardest. China could lose millions of export and manufacturing jobs. And at a time when economic growth is slowing, that could cause not only huge problems with their economy, but it could lead to political instability as well. After all, one of the big reasons people put up with the Communist Party is economic growth.
Very true. And if China loses more, does that mean America wins?
It's not so cut and dried. There are other things that would probably happen, like the cheap manufacturing that's currently in China would move even faster to places like Southeast Asia. And it might create a gray market where goods are manufactured in China but shipped to another country where they're officially exported to the U.S. to avoid the tariffs.
Are you really saying that people will find loopholes to avoid taxes? Anyway, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Well, we actually have kind of a test case, what I like to call the rubber chicken skirmish of 2009. That's when President Obama set a tariff of 35% on Chinese tires. It did manage to save 1,200 U.S. tire jobs and increased U.S. tire production. However, tires also got way more expensive for U.S. consumers, and China raised retaliatory tariffs on chicken parts from the U.S., which cost chicken producers about $1 billion.
I'm glad that wasn't actually about rubber chickens. I was starting to worry about you.
Would it help if I told you that I didn't sleep last night?
No.
Okay, one thing to note here, Chris, is that I have been talking about this tariff in generalities, since Trump hasn't yet talked about the specifics of his plan. However, economist Peter Navarro, who's the new director of Trump's National Trade Council, has defended the tariff. He says that it would be applied not on everything, but with a flexible case-by-case approach, and that tariffs would be used strategically to negotiate with China. Remember, the Chinese regime is scared to lose manufacturing jobs because that could affect China's political stability. That means the threat of a trade war could be a powerful bargaining chip for the U.S. So, if these tariffs are targeted to give the U.S. greater political leverage over China and expose the ways the Communist Party has gamed the system, they could maybe get the party to change some of their trade practices. And that would make the tariffs successful even if they don't bring back millions of manufacturing jobs.
So what you're saying is, America wins.
Trade isn't exactly a zero-sum game, Chris, and, okay, you know what? Yes, America wins.
Thanks, Shelley. That's what I like to hear. Go get some sleep. And thank you for watching this episode of China Uncensored. What do you think of the possible U.S.-China trade war? Leave your comments below. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. See you next time.